Welcome to the Elevate Podcast. We're so grateful that you could join us today. Today we are joined by the guys from Interlogic, Bryce and Mike. And they've been doing a lot of great work. We're excited to be able to kind of pick their brains on what's going on with Interlogic, why they started Interlogic, what sports they like, and just all kinds of other random things that we can tend to get up to. As you know, me and Dalton, we're a little unpredictable, you know what I'm saying? So we're going to get this party started, and so we'll start with, we're grateful you guys came in.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
We're
thanks
grateful
so much
to be
for having
asked.
us.
Hey, no problem. We're so pumped to have you. Obviously, we had a couple technical glitches, which again is just happening as part of the podcast at this point.
You guys are so professional.
Thanks, I appreciate it so much. So we'll start off with a tough question. All right. So you told me you're sports guys. That's why started Interlogic, helping with some sports homies. It's always good.
Yep.
Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
Wow, right off the bat.
You're throwing us to the wolves
Absolutely. We got to keep the heat on.
I'm Michael Jordan through and through. Yeah.
Good stuff. Why? You need a why, because come on. You know what the LeBron homies are gonna say. So.
Did you watch the documentary on Netflix?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think I'm biased because I like just the brand of basketball that was happening when Michael Jordan was playing. I've got a ton of respect for like Steph Curry, and you can drill threes from like just inside half and all that. But it's just it's different than what I'm used to. Like, when I was a fan of basketball, like as a kid, when, I was like maybe 12 when Jordan was kind of doing his second run there or something like that. The game was just different. And I thought Jordan was just like the hero. He had like he'd cracked the code of that style of play. And now I feel like, if you can shoot a ball from as far out as Curry, no disrespect. I know you didn't even ask about Curry. I'm talking about Curry. But in the style of game, if you can shoot a ball from that far out and like, they're dropping them at a good clip, it's just different to me. Jordan had to work a lot. He had to work real hard to get, you watch him get beat up in there quite a bit. He played like every position. He could basically do everything on the basketball court. People are really specialized now. Before you go, LeBron, I will give LeBron credit that he can also pretty much play every position. I mean, the guy's a monster. He could play in the post. He can play point guard. So he's unbelievable, but I don't know. I'm just a traditionalist, I think.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm on board with Bryce's answer here. Not as big of a fan of basketball in general, but it's a different style of basketball that's being played now. It's more physical. The guys, like the strength and conditioning, the training that these guys do allow them to do things physically that in, Michael Jordan's era, they just couldn't do. So I think with the way that the game was played and the athleticism that existed in that day, Michael accomplished a lot more. There's no doubt that I think, today LeBron James, like pound for pound, is a more athletic human than Michael Jordan. He can do some ridiculous things. But I think Michael Jordan just, in that era, the things that he accomplished under the pressure that he was under, incredible. And, you wonder, would the Bulls have won another championship if he kept playing or if he didn't retire the first time? And I think the answer is maybe at least once more in that. And that's just an incredible run that you can't reproduce right now. Like LeBron just hasn't touched that level of eliteness yet.
I think Michael Jordan, like literally was, when he went and played baseball, everyone, criticized like switching sports as the main, but I think it's clear in the documentary, he was just burnt out. Like he's so competitive. He burned the candle so hard trying to win that he just needed to go and play something like a kid, like, when you just like to play, like go outside and play something. Pure fun. Like baseball was just like a new task, like something for his brain to just kind of unwind a little bit. I don't know if he would have made it through like to the end of, 6 years if he hadn't have gone and taken a break, even though it was professional baseball. Now I'd love to see if LeBron went and played some NFL. That's like, it sounds insane in today's world, but MJ went and played baseball. I would love it. That'd be like the most entertaining shit ever. Like if LeBron was like, I'm going to play slot back for the Patriots, I'd be like, I'm going.
Right.
I'm watching that.
I'd pay to watch that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I guess to be fair, I am very much a Michael guy myself. I think a lot of it because I mean, I was born in the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. You know, I got to see the last three-peat. And what I've been kind of seeing is, again, the mentality that comes with Michael Jordan, as you guys said. You know, it was just that's the one thing I also loved about Kobe. I was this idea that, you know, it just doesn't really matter. I'm just going to work as hard as I possibly can to be the best. And there's nothing you can do you're going to do to beat me. You know, it reminds me of a story I heard when in regards to Kobe, imitating that mentality that Michael had, where there was it's a man, he works for ESPN now as an analyst, but he was a player. I'm spacing his name at the moment, but he was having a tough time. You know, he was on the verge of kind of falling out of the NBA and things were going well. And that night they were going to LA to play Kobe and the Lakers. And he's like, all right, tonight's the night I got to shine to be able to keep my job and stay in the NBA. So he went in, the game was at 7:30 that night. He went in at 3:00 to go shoot around. He gets there and Kobe's there shooting. He's like, okay, well, he keeps shooting an hour and a half. You know, this guy keeps shooting. And it was Jay Williams, that's what it was. And he was just shooting. And he's like, and then Kobe was still going. He's like, well, I'm done. I'm going to go, you know, cool off and get in the shower and then, you know, get ready for tonight's game. So he leaves and he's like, you know, I'm just going to stick around and see what happens. And then Kobe just kept going for another 15, 20, 30 minutes. You know, he's like, all right. And then he got off and they both left and went to their respective change rooms. That night, Kobe dropped something like 52 points on him.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, just, you know, it's pretty decent. And at the end of the game, Jay Williams pulled him aside, like, Kobe, like, why were you, you know, practicing like why were you practicing so hard before tonight's game? He's like, oh, I saw you coming in, and I just wanted you to know that no matter how hard you work, I'm always going to work harder than you. I was like, wow, that's the mentality, right? You know, people can obviously have their feelings and how they feel about it, but there's something to be said about the dedication, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guys at that level have that mindset. They have that work ethic that's like superhuman, right? And I think about in my day-to-day working hard, it's a grind. It's hard. It's hard to stay focused. It's hard to keep going. And, you know, the best performers in the world, it doesn't drain them.
Yeah.
They can do it all day. And, you know, in The Last Dance, you know, that was a big thing that I learned from Michael Jordan is, you know, he was filming a movie and he was playing like some ridiculously high level ball.
A sick movie, by the way.
Yeah, seriously.
Classic. And he was still, you know, practicing and playing at a super high level while he was doing this really rigorous schedule. You know, that level of dedication, it's unreal. Like, how do you love something that much that you can just do it forever?
Yeah, absolutely. And so being, you know, the tandem of Mike and Bryce and Mike, I don't know how it goes. You know, you specialize in focusing on the mental health, mental awareness of athletes. So what do you think it takes in someone on a medical level, mental health level, for someone like Michael to get there and consistently be there?
Wow, that's a big question. You said we were going to go deep. I didn't anticipate that level of depth. Well, so there's just kind of one broad theme that I think is worth sharing from the MJ documentary. And it's more of a philosophical question. I'm not, you know, going to try and cite any evidence behind this, more so just from the general point of view of like a fan or whoever's interested in sport. And they look at, you know, someone like Michael Jordan as their, you know, their model, like their role model, or, you know, they take a lot of, you know, their mindset cues from people like that. And I think it's worth wondering or asking, you know, is being that competitive and being mentally healthy, are they compatible? Like, are those competing issues with each other? You know, I don't think they've really got their finger on the pulse yet of what all the costs are of pushing as hard as someone like Michael pushes. You know, from a life balance standpoint, you know, from a almost like he made up stories like in his mind, right? Like he created falsities. He really developed in his own brain a narrative that allowed him to feel like he was constantly under the gun. He was constantly trying to be taken down. And some of the stuff wasn't even true, right? Is that mentally healthy? I don't know if many psychologists would say, yeah, that's totally in the range of mental health. And, I think I'll go back to that baseball example. I think it was understated a little bit in the documentary as to like what that did for him, why he needed to do it. And I think it was, about mental health really in the end. And Mike and I have had this conversation just from some of the performers we've worked with, multi-gold medalists at Olympics, at World Championships. And, generally speaking, we see some of the same trends in that you really have to consider what your costs you're inviting into your life to win multiple things in a row at a level where you're the best in the world at what you do. And you should build into your plan that you probably need, some time off to recover in large chunks. If you're not taking those micro times to recover, like the Michael Jordans of the world where it's go, go, go nonstop every day for many years.
Right.
Yeah. But it's a big question that
Absolutely.
you ask.
And I think that makes a lot of sense because, you see the age old adage happen a lot in professional sports where, you get these guys who do get to such high depths in their respective fields. You can say what you want about them. But in terms, I look at a guy like LeBron James, like the type of, the way he's in the public eye and on a social level, political level, and basketball, there's a lot that comes with that, a lot of weight. And the fact that he's responded the way he has been pretty impressive. You see a lot of these guys who can kind of get into drug addictions, partying or a lot of different things that they kind of try to numb the pain in some ways or numb the kind of the craziness of the lifestyle they're living, only because sports can be crazy, because essentially it's another business. You gotta, serve people who want to pay to see you. And so it can be tough.
It's a lot of pressure.
The pressure's unreal. That's something that I experienced firsthand. I was a practitioner. I went to the Olympics in Rio, and as a data analyst, and I was helping some of Team Canada's athletes, and I was lucky enough to be basically on the start line with those athletes and behind the scenes. And you can see athletes preparing for the biggest moments of their lives. And just looking at them, I was nervous to the point where I was shaking, and I'm not even competing. I'm just there to watch and help. And, and you can see some athletes shaking, crying, the pressure is immense. And, there's not a lot of humans out there that can actually handle that type of pressure.
Yeah.
And so, that's another big thing that I take away from, the greats like Kobe and Michael Jordan, LeBron, the pressure that they're under, it's incredible. And they have to deal with it every day. The media, the interviews, again, in the Last Dance, the interviews that Michael would go through after games, people are asking him, when are you going to retire? Are you guys going to win? It's just nonstop.
And it's the same questions over and over again too.
It's
crazy.
How do you handle that? Like none of us really know the extent and the pressure that these guys go through, those top performers. And so I think there's a learning process once you do become a top performer. Not everyone can handle it. So that's where the balance perspective comes in. How well you can shut yourself off, how well you can rest up, how well you can kind of take care of your own health is so key.
For sure. And I kind of want to shift the conversation a little bit, and this kind of is going to lead well into Dalton's question, is, you've started up a Neurologic, and there's a lot that comes with starting up a company, which I know myself, I know you as well, as you started your company too. It can be heavy on the personal life, heavy just in general.
It's an understatement.
Yeah, exactly. It can be a lot. So for yourself, as you've, kickstarted Neurologic, how's that process been so far? How's it been going for you guys?
It's been a huge challenge. We started, we didn't originally, when we started to work together, we didn't really have the intent of starting a company. We just wanted to kind of work on some cool projects together. Yeah. We had some ideas. Hey, let's try to quantify like the mental aspects of performance, exactly the things that we're talking about. What dictates, what aspects can we measure that analyzes how an athlete's going to perform?
Yeah.
All right. So, we spent a lot of time. We developed a questionnaire. We developed a technical process, a web app.
Yeah.
And we got it out there and we started to collect some information. And, right there, that whole process of, design, development, execution, we really fell in love with it. and this collaboration, right? Like, it takes some of the skills that I'm really good at, which is like developing stuff, analytics, and it takes the skill set that Bryce is really good at, which is, design, mental performance, team culture, and really brings them together, and it makes a product that's better than either one of us can create on our own.
Totally.
So, we started to work together and really enjoy that process. And the further you go down that path, you start to realize, okay, there's a lot of stuff to be done to set this up properly and to eventually create a business out of it.
Yeah.
And it consumes you. It ends up being the only thing you think about when you're at your day job.
Yep.
It creeps in.
Yep.
Our boss at the sports center, he knew about our projects and he was very supportive.
Yeah.
But he was well aware this is going to creep into your day to day because, it's more exciting.
You can't turn it off.
You can't turn
it off.
It's just like this voice in the back of your head that's like, hey, this thing's really exciting. You should think about that.
Yeah. Like all the time. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, that led us down this path of creating Interlogic. And, there's been a lot of challenges since then, but it's like a roller coaster and it's a ton of fun.
Totally. I think that's a really cool outlook onto what it takes to start a business. I think we, as you said, all can relate to what that takes and what that feels like. I want to circle back to something that you actually had mentioned, which was the pushing yourself too hard in athletics, not taking those mental breaks and the cost of what you're doing, finding that balance. Mm-hmm. How do you relate that into your business? Have either of you ever found yourselves pushing too hard? Have you find yourselves in a position where the costs maybe sometimes don't feel like it's worth what's going into it? And how do you find that balance or harmony? Like we said in our last episode, do you have a work-life balance or a work-life harmony? Is it a 9 to 5 and I'm off, or is it a 9 to when I need to answer an email because I care about my clients? What philosophy do you take on your work life? So those are what I'd like to pick your brains on.
A lot of great questions in there. I think your first one was, have you ever pushed it too hard?
Absolutely.
Yeah, like, all the time, I think.
Yeah.
And you get little cues and signals that kind of let you know that this is happening, because sometimes your own self-awareness is blinded by your passion for what you're trying to do.
Totally.
And, like my wife would be a good kind of barometer of I think one of the things she actually loves about me is like the ability to push really hard.
Yeah.
But she's definitely aware that, okay, this has gone too far. Like, that you can't be, I was on a call last night at like 10:20 and it was totally, by choice. I could have said, I'd rather do this tomorrow morning. In fact, he said, there's an option tomorrow morning, but I knew I wouldn't sleep if I didn't do it because it was too exciting to do the call. Yeah. So I choose to do it. And then she's upset because it's like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, you're seeing it as I'm taking a call late, and I'm seeing it as, well, but I'm going to sleep terrible if I'm thinking about what's going to happen on this call. So
I'm actually taking the call early.
Exactly. I'm taking the call early. But it's just like and Mike's going to be a parent soon, so this is more relevant for him. It's like any parent or coach or leader in any space, you have to model, what you say and what you sell, and, you got to live it every day. We're lucky that in our business, our business is about team culture. Our business is about, like elite mental performance skills. And so, we constantly have that gut check moment between us where we're like, this is what we do. We can't go down this path of poor communication, because one of our metrics is literally communication that we're selling to other people.
Yeah.
So the very first thing that we did was, like, we onboarded ourselves onto our own product, even though there's only 2 of us on the team. Now we've got some new team members helping out, and we onboard them to make sure that we constantly have a pulse on our emotional state, because that's part of our product. Definitely. We constantly have a pulse on, our team culture and things that can really wear you down socially, and just addressing those at all times. I can't remember the last part of your question.
Yeah, no, totally. I kind of spit a lot out there.
Yeah.
The last one was, do you take a work-life balance or work-life harmony approach to, working / being at home, especially right now during quarantine times where you're working from home always for the most part, right? So is it something that you have the ability to turn off at 5 o'clock? You kind of already touched on it where you said you took that call at 10.
Yeah.
But I guess to the both of you, is that something that's consistent or sort of one-off every once in a while?
I think it's something that's at the back of our head, and we're thinking about it as we push ourselves, because I think you need to be able to push yourself acutely.
Yeah.
So there may be like a few days where we're like, we got this big meeting. We got to be able to sprint to finish these features. We got to, raise some money. There's a lot of demands and it needs to get done,
Yeah.
So you need to be able to go really hard for a brief period of time, but recognizing that when you do go hard, you got to give yourself some reward, rest, really unplug. And Bryce and I are really good in the way we work with each other. We just communicate like, I'm offline all this evening. So don't even try to text me or call me because I won't answer.
Mike told me it was his anniversary, his 1 year wedding anniversary the day before. And we have so much like in our minds, exciting stuff going on that the next night at like 7:40, I called him and I was like, call me back. And he's like, dude, it's my anniversary. And I was like, oh shit.
Oh, right.
I see on Instagram, he's like in a picture with his wife, like at their wedding venue. And I'm like, anyway, that's where I did a terrible job of, for the most part, I think we do a good job, but there's little moments where you're like, oh shit.
For sure.
Yeah. Should have been more aware.
The wife's really supportive. She would have understood if I took that call at that point, but
sometimes it's better to not take the call. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So you gotta plan those things ahead. You gotta really think about those things. And for me right now, what I'm struggling with the most is to wear multiple hats. I actually find that burns me out the quickest.
Really?
Yeah.
I found that intriguing. Okay.
So, the hat that I'm wearing right now is developer, biz dev, sales, you name it, product development, design. Although I'm not that good at design, Bryce is a lot better at that.
And I'm not very good. We always hit blocks where we're like, we're going to call someone on this.
But today, for example, this morning we had some really exciting like business development stuff going on, like trying to work a pretty large deal. And for me, I like to really think through like all the aspects of that deal. Like, what are the things that we can develop together? What do we need to pitch? What's the pricing point? Right. All the details. At the same time, I'm sitting at my desk trying to build out a feature and I'm just like so slow at it. I can't think about it. I'm like, oh my God, my headspace just not there.
Right.
Yeah. So this is a new struggle for me because it's just I think a reality of the startup life that we're living. You got to wear every hat.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to develop some strategies around how do I more effectively like wear one hat for one day and then another hat
clock
the next
out
day.
And clock in the next.
Yeah. Like switching back and forth it sucks. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's draining.
And multitasking is clearly, debunked in the research. Like, you cannot multitask.
Yeah.
You can only pay attention to one thing at a time. You just dilute your attention if you're trying to go, between a bunch of things. And because of the multiple hats, I mean, they say the average employee now has like 8 screens open at once on their computer. Yeah. And, you check your phone 260 times a day. And there's a lot of facts out there that, suggest that our attention is becoming really difficult to manage, just from the world is presenting us with a lot of things. And so, you face those normal challenges that are the common person. And then you add on to that in a business model where we don't have the resources to have all these staff members involved. And so we're trying to wear different hats. But to Mike's point, part of our product is a personality assessment. And what we've learned through our own personality measure is we're very different in a lot of different ways. And I'm very extroverted. He's very introverted. And that shows up a ton in some of these situations where I actually prefer to wear multiple hats. So we'll do one thing and then something else will happen. I'll call Mike because I'm like, I want to bounce around. That's how my brain is kind of wired. And he's like, I want to dial in. And he'll send me a text. He won't answer and he'll send me a text that's like, I need to concentrate. And I totally respect that text because he's different than I am. And it's like, I love when he sends that because I'm like, okay, great. Thanks for pushing me back. Now I can give you,
the space that you're
5 hours of just coding. Like what you're doing what we need to get done. So it's just the way we're wired is different. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think personally, I'm definitely a multiple hat wearer. Like I kind of enjoy that. I get some insight on the business that Josh spoke of me starting up. It's a real estate company here in the city.
Cool.
So about end of last year into early this year, I had hired a property manager to start looking after my properties here. Within days, I felt the most uncomfortable I've felt ever.
Okay.
Because I was no longer in control of my investments. And that stressed me out to the max. There was someone else talking to my clients and they were doing things, and I can't run my business that way. I like to have a thumb on everything, which some people will say is bad because that might mean I can't give up control. But in the same breath, it's hard not to when it's only you on the line and only you at the end of the day on the line. So it's hard to kind of find that disconnect where it's like, eventually I'm going to have to, but it's going to be hard, you know?
Totally. And I love applying a little bit of science to these day-to-day problems. So, you know, right away when you said that, in my mind, I was like, well, the stress equation is what you're describing. It's uncertainty times importance times volume.
Yeah.
Right? That's the stress equation. That's when we feel stress.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, think of it this way. Like, if you were to feel uncertain about something, but it wasn't important to you, like the outcome of something, you're like, I don't care about that.
Right.
Right? Like,
it can happen in whatever way.
Yeah. So it's uncertain, but the importance is so low that you're like, I don't feel much stress about that.
Yeah.
And then you pile on top of that this kind of resilience model, which is basically when you start to feel like the resources you have internally don't match or measure up against what you're facing externally.
Yeah.
And that's when you start to feel like your resilience is going down and it really starts to become a weight on your shoulders. And so, you know, that's why all this stuff I firmly believe is a skill.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can start to figure out that I actually do have quite a bit of resources. Like, I'm just not noticing what they are. I'm not taking advantage of certain things. And you start to go, wow, the external's here and I think I'm here, but really, you know, it's actually here. It's just a matter of perspective. So
definitely.
But what you said to me was like the stress equation in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Because it's uncertain. You don't know who that person is yet.
That's it.
Right?
You know?
It's the most important thing in your life, and you're doing this for weeks, months, years on end. So.
Yeah. I think that resilience piece was definitely it, because the one thing I did take out that was really good from those few months where I did have a property manager was watching what they did, because their fundamental structure made sense in a real estate business, but I wanted to be the one doing it. So I was at least able to learn what they were doing and then just do it myself.
Right.
So I got those resources. I learned how to sort of find what's around me and use that to do it myself.
Right.
So it wasn't all bad, because in anything that happens, I try and look for a little good. There's usually some good out of something or a lesson or something. So all around, I was not too mad at the end of the day.
Right.
But it was a personal struggle, I think, that I wasn't ready to face. I didn't know I was going to face. So it was definitely cool in that regard.
Absolutely,
Yeah. All right.
Swing the mic.
Swing the mic.
Swing the mic.
That should be the name of your guys' podcast.
Seriously, you know what?
And lean in to the one mic.
Absolutely, you know what? That's what we're gonna do. From here on out, the Swing and Mic podcast. Swing and Mic podcast. Shout out to Mac behind the scenes. Honestly, she's doing a great job, making sure the cameras are on, making sure things are good on that end.
You guys are so lucky.
Yeah, seriously, we're so stinking lucky, man. She's honestly, the only person I know that will, do things for the price of Five Guys meal. Shout out Five Guys. Hashtag not sponsored.
Great currency.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. But kind of want to jump into, obviously we've been talking a lot about deep on, mental health and kind of how it affects our daily lives. But as Interlogic as a whole, like, what's the product? What's the company? What are you trying to accomplish? That's what the people really want to know.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey developing this product and trying to understand, what the market wants out of this. Bryce and I, we started to quantify the performance aspects of team culture. And we started to do that with a number of different university sports teams. And we started getting a lot of experience. So, okay, these are the factors that really determine what shapes culture. And it started to say, team culture is such an important factor to understand. It influences the performance of that team, right? And you think about the best sports teams in history, they all have some of the best culture, or at least a lot of the components of what makes a great culture. You think about the New Zealand All Blacks, think about New England Patriots, some soccer teams, and I'm a big soccer fan. So
Barcelona is the big one.
Barcelona. So we were really honing in on this concept of culture. And the more we talked to executives and CEOs, we realized it's the exact same thing in a business, right? There's an example from a friend of ours where some cultural issues go unnoticed, and they may go for several months. So what's the output of those cultural issues? Well, productivity is decreased. There's some issues, outputs become late, results diminish, right? So the whole performance of that team is at jeopardy. And ultimately you make less money. So our goal was to develop a product which kind of solves this problem. Why don't we give tools to leaders to monitor their culture, understand what's going on, make it a normal, acceptable process to talk about your culture and to raise these issues. Like if you have an issue about our communication or our direction, or you don't feel like you're having an impact on our work, say something about it. Tell us. So we've provided the medium to do that. And as we've explored that market and what the market wants out of that, we've started to kind of tack on tools on top of that concept. We've realized that within companies, nobody really develops leaders, right? Yeah. Like no one's like, hey, this is what it's like to be a leader, and these are the skills you need to have, and you got to talk to people, and you got to understand, the emotional environment of your team.
Absolutely,
it's really important to be cued into that, or else people are going to have issues, and they're not going to talk to you about them. And so we're just realizing like there's no one in a company is in charge of that. So we're starting to, again, build some tool sets around how do we help businesses not only monitor their culture, own their culture, but help their leaders be better leaders, right? And same thing in sport. How do the best coaches become the best coaches? Well, they develop as leaders. For the most part, they're kind of like develop this intuitive sense of, this is what great leaders do, so I'm going to emulate that. But there's not really an educational process or, a set of tools that you can use to really develop that.
Right. So, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Another question I want to follow up is because, especially as CEOs, people are trying to start companies, you sometimes you start going a little crazy, right? It's like, man, things aren't going the way I thought they would go. Not really psyched about that. And you start getting in your own head, where it's like, does anyone actually want this? At what point in your journey with Interlogic was it like, did you receive that validation that, we are solving the problem that we think is there? When did that happen, or has it happened yet?
I think we've had, the last month has been really positive in terms of feeling a lot more confidence in what we're doing and building and offering is the right fit for, the gap that we thought existed. And I think there was a long period of trying to put square pegs in round holes. And there's so like people really, I shouldn't say people, we really, I think underestimated how impactful that process is to get something into people's hands. And, we heard a lot of tales of people spending, years working on something and never trying it, like never getting it out there. And so Mike was really great at making sure we pushed really hard to just get, flawed. We knew they're flawed, but we had to figure out how they're flawed and how to fix those flaws. And so he was really good at pushing us to just like, let's get it out there and like get people using it. And I'm a little more of a perfectionist, and it made me super uncomfortable. And I was like, what the hell are we doing? Like, why are we, this isn't ready. And Mike's like, it's never going to be done if we don't get it out there. So absolutely. The last month we've had, a few breakthroughs in terms of, really understanding that, okay, what we've built is, like 80 to 90% right. And that last 20% it can come in a few ways. It can come in the way of, we actually need 2 new features that are brand new. It can come in the way of, we have all the right features, but they don't work properly. We need to tweak the way that they actually function. And so we got a little bit of both. We've got some features that, like our flagship feature, which is a culture pulse that, empowers leaders to check the pulse of their culture whenever they want, with a 360 view for everybody on dashboards. So sort of like an open data cycle model where, everyone gets to see what, like, the research is clear. Transformational culture is better, right? Transactional culture sucks. People don't like it. It has, it works really well in an acute way. And then chronically it makes everyone super unhappy in what they're doing. And so, we've developed the system to be transformational. Transformational says be open, be vulnerable, collaborate. Don't take this power dynamic and push everything down. Like, let's work a little more here. And so that's what we've done. And that piece of what we've done has kind of emerged through and through like the thick and thin of features that we've tried and twisted and broken. This one has emerged as people want it. The one tweak that we had to make was we naively thought that, okay, the best timeline for this is weekly. We're like, teams will want this weekly. We can break it down by team on a weekly basis. And everyone, start your Monday morning with this like super awesome dashboard of knowledge of where to go. We just had this breakthrough this month where it's like, we need to empower leaders to lead the way they want to lead. We equip them with this, what we believe is like, culture feels like a moving target to everybody all the time. It's like this ambiguous, everyone has everyone has their opinion on it. Yeah. And so we pride ourselves on the ability to nail it down. This is what culture is. And this is what you need to get feedback on. And this is what you need to talk about. And so we've empowered leaders to do that on their own timeline. In addition to that, we've just learned that we need to build a few things in. We need to tweak some things that we've already done. But, what we're really psyched about is this, what Mike mentioned, which is this like concept of training. So it's not just transactional surveys where, people give their feedback and it's like, where the hell did that go? We've built in a lot of tools to make sure that people are growing and developing, and we're prompting them to grow, and we're prompting them to solve this problem of communication. We're giving them insights on, your communication's low, but it's mostly this type of personality based on, these personality results that have come in another way. And just trying to give them all the information they need to go, boom, this is the problem. To link it to sport, an example that's resonated with a lot of people we've worked with, a lot of leaders we've noticed are really big into sport. Like CEOs just love sports. And so, basically the analogy we used is like, the way that you're monitoring your culture right now or managing your culture right now is like if at the end of the season, if the Raptors, in the early 2000s have a bad year and they get a bunch of feedback from their players on what went wrong, right? At the very end of the season, and everyone says, oh, the offense sucked, it didn't flow, right? People weren't touching the ball. And you're like, well, geez, like we have how many games to try and analyze which one of these issues was showing up where, and how do we even start to attack this, right? That doesn't work, right? But that's what businesses do is they get like one-time, large-scale, one-directional feedback, and it's like, oh my gosh, everyone thinks that our communication's a problem. Where to even begin, right, on that? But if you get it in smaller groups and teams that are, it's like 10 people working together, and you get it more frequently, you've narrowed this down to, we know the kind of the population we're dealing with. We've narrowed it down to, we know what happened this week. We know what we worked on. We know who's working together. So you can target. You can go, boom, that's right. That's the problem, right? And that's what the best coaches in sport do. They don't wait until the end, right? They're transformational all the time. They want to know after every single game, team debrief, right? What happened in that game? What happened? Why was it a 2-point game with 4 minutes left? And then they pulled away to 10. There's a reason. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, it's like that Moneyball approach almost. Sports teams, if you look behind the curtain on sports teams, the analytics that go on, the information, they're reviewing game footage, they're collecting wellness surveys on all the athletes in the gym. There's devices that they're using to measure the speeds of the bar, force plates to measure how much force they're producing. The amount of quantification that exists is incredible. But then you talk about mental performance and team culture, and there's literally nothing. And, we feel like the same processes in the business side don't really exist. Or they do exist in some form, more through, performance executive coaches or these survey companies that might execute something like once a year, and they're huge and they take a long time. You just strip away the context. you're not doing it in the moment. You're not collecting and monitoring that data in real time. And there's so much value. You're losing the value of the data you're collecting because you're removing the context from it, right?
Right.
The frequency's too low. So it's not deliberate feedback anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now you got one.
Swing the mic.
Swing the mic. So I took a lot out of what you just said, and a lot that resonated was the culture and culture pulse. I know you mentioned that, both of you I think mentioned that. In regards to how you see that in a business setting, do you see the culture development being handled through an HR employee, or do you see that as a separate role within a business or a firm? And do you feel that the typical HR role that's usually meant to handle office culture and office development, do you feel that's outdated and sort of worn out and it needs someone dedicated to culture 24/7?
This is, we've hit
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's so timely because, as we get out there, as we've put the product out there into people's hands, into companies' hands, we sell the CEOs or the executives on the platform. The execs are all sport, they're performance, they're competitive. They're like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Let's use it. And then what they do is they hand us off to their HR execs because the HR department is in charge of delivering, any sort of program that they're involved in, right? The logistics of it, who signs up for it, who pays for it, it all goes through HR. Mm-hmm. So we've had to adapt a number of different things because the people, the HR employees some of them feel like they own the culture of their organization, right? So they're protectors of it.
Yep.
And they also are looking out for the well-being of their employees, right? So they don't want to exclude anybody. They don't want to make anybody feel like this isn't for them. Mm-hmm. So it's been a really interesting feedback cycle as we got out there and we're like, everyone needs to take a personality assessment. Everyone needs to contribute. Everyone needs this feedback. And, HR employees were like, whoa, not everyone wants to do this.
Which is so different. Like, we're not used to that from sport.
Right.
In a sport, It's like everybody, you're a team. Yeah. Everyone's paid to do this.
Yeah.
We want the best performance. So of course you guys are going to do this, right? Like there's no question.
Yeah. Like LeBron isn't walking in being like, I don't think I'm going to do the strength testing.
I know I'm strong.
Yeah, I know. Well, LeBron probably could do that. But some other team members probably, you can't just skip strength testing and everyone be like, that's cool, man. Like, it's totally up to you. Like, whatever you want to do.
They're demanding to do it. Like, the top performers, like, we're doing it. Like, we're doing it now.
Yeah.
So, it's been an interesting kind of world to navigate. I don't think, fundamentally HR employees are necessarily trained in developing leadership. I think they're involved with it. I think a lot of them take the task on, but it's not really anyone's domain. And so we're trying to navigate that space right now. We think there is a role for people in HR to participate in our platform, and we've created some tools for people in HR to utilize so they feel like they're a part of it and they're helping to manage it. But ultimately, it's the team leaders that should take the lead on these things, right? So we're really trying to empower the team leader in their own development of leadership. And so we're still having those conversations with people from HR and leaders and trying to navigate that. I don't think we have the perfect answer to it yet, but I think there's some sort of middle ground there that we need to.
We need to your broader question. The model is shifting, not because of us, because it is. The market is showing. There's other products out there that are really becoming quite successful in this space. Yeah. It's the way we've looked at it is it's a matter of how do you tap into the passion of the HR folks? Because, once we end up in that conversation, they are, whether it's deemed as overprotective or, some of those maybe negative views or connotations of it, the reality is most of them are just super passionate about culture, right? That's a good thing for us. That's a plus because so are we. So we need to find a way to go, you're passionate about your company's culture. We're passionate about culture and giving you the best tools to build it. Let's find a product that you would kind of translate your passion into, that you would support as like the HR person.
Yeah.
While at the same time reducing their workload. We've talked to HR people who legitimately every week build a personalized 360 assessment that's, you know, sent out to some percentage of their company with hundreds of people in it, right? So they're just going every week. My job as HR is to get this feedback from this group or this group or this group, build a graph in Excel, like pump out a PDF. And it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, we're here for that, right? It's just a matter of making sure that they believe in our evidence and the products that we produce. They believe in our personality assessment. They think it's, you know, it's valid and it's not going to be intrusive and all these other things.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, those are really good points. One last thing on this, and then I'll hand it back off to Josh. Do you feel that the existing lack of touch on Culture Pulse could be the reason or led to employees not wanting to participate in something that might actually benefit the team?
Do you mean like the longer form, like annual things have put a bad taste in people's
where
mouth?
typically a HR interaction or review is deemed as a chore and not something that they want to participate in. So when they're offered something like this to participate in, they assume it's just another clunky HR tactic.
100%.
Totally.
Yeah.
It needs to be for them. Like we were taught that lesson by someone who's been helping us along the way, who's the CEO of a local company. And his advice was exactly that. You know, this has to be in some way positioned for the employees.
Right.
It's for you. You like, work is more than just a job to people now. The research is very clear on that too. People are pursuing purpose and passion.
Lifestyles.
Like lifestyle. That's a great word for it. And when something's more than a job, you know, you start really investing or wanting to invest in the type of experience that you're having. So how can we help? You know, part of our goal is to help those people shape their own experience in a way that, you know, they feel involved, empowered, but also the team is, you know, performing better as a result, right? So a rising tide floats all boats. Yeah. Right. So can we create that rising tide in a way for people? Right. Yeah.
I got a good story to kind of connect that to in the sport realm. I'm going to try to anonymize the names here. So, you know, won't get into any trouble. But we pitched at a pretty high level, sport, technology, pitch competition. And we were, you know, in the top mix. We were in kind of the finalist running. And we got a call and, you know, they give you feedback on the pitch and your product and all this stuff. This was back when we were more focused on exclusively on sport. And granted, you know, we were probably less clear on what we were actually doing at that time. But the feedback we got was that, you know, it'd be great if a device could measure culture. And they didn't think that...
Do it in a wearable.
Do it a wearable. Like, we don't think that our professional athletes are going to fill out a survey. Like, we don't think they'll get it. We'll get the buy-in, right? So they passed on it. And, you know, for us, it made us reflect a lot on that. And it made us realize there's different levels of culture, right? And the first level, let's say you roll out this tool to measure culture and nobody wants to do it. Well, that's a measure on your culture that's telling you it sucks. And so that sport team ended up firing their head coach and doing a major restructure. They were, you know, a ridiculously overpaid professional sports team with all the superstars on it that just weren't performing at all, right? So to hear the feedback from them that nobody will want to do this, for us was an indicator like, you know, this really validates the need to do it because your culture is that bad. And anyway, we feel like we were validated a little bit when after they fired their head coach, like a couple of weeks later, and the whole team kind of restructured.
Were they a losing team?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean,
below 500.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's all I need to know. Cool. Good enough.
Yeah, and I mean, just to Mike's point, really quickly, you also learn that you need, like the HR conversation, you need somebody in a high-performing team, whether it's sport, whether it's business, who's championing culture. Like, they, you know, it's their whole job. Like, they really want to build a great culture in this team, and they're committed to finding the right tools to do that. And there's a lot of old school leaders and old school coaches, not saying they're wrong or bad, but you know, they've had success in a transactional way, and now they're coaching young people who grew up in a more transformational system through and through, from the way their school was run, to their parents. And it's just, people are, I think, in today's world, more inclined to want to have, a say and be involved in that military style is kind of gone. Yeah. And those leaders are the ones who are like, ooh, I don't think I could ever confront this feedback or take the time to, do this technologically. My intuition is better than any technology you could ever give me. And our argument is, you can't scale that, right? You're going to burn yourself out, like trying to use you can't gather all that data intuitively.
Right.
Yeah, it's just, it has value. The best leaders and coaches have great intuition, but when you scale, right? Like that's our whole thing now, is like, we have to scale. So, and so do these leaders.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Because it's funny you talked about, the, transformational structure versus more of a transactional structure. It reminds me of, I find my generation, I'm 27 now. I graduated high school 10 years ago now. And, big thing, I was huge into high school football. I ended up being the captain of the team my senior year. And I had...
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. The scrawny guy, the way I look now, you wouldn't believe it.
Lost 60 pounds.
Straight up. Honestly, I don't even know how I didn't gain... I have not gained any type of weight since high school. It's kind of crazy. So I had a couple different experiences with different types of coaching. I find my generation was kind of, I got the mixture of the transactional versus the transformational. My first couple of years of high school football, it was a lot. I had a coach that was very much get in your face, yell at you. Do you not want to be here tonight? Boy, let's go, and kind of had that mentality. Yeah. And I remember my grade 11 year, that was the worst year for our football team that I've ever been part of, where majority, because we had high standards for academics at our school, the best players got cut from the team. And so it left us with 22 guys. 21 guys. So most guys are just playing both ways all season long. Yeah. And you had a coach that was always yelling at you, always getting in your face. And I was kind of I remember one time I missed, I was playing defense. I was a sweep around. And I missed the tackle. And my coach just got in my face on the field. He's like, do you even want to be here today? What are you doing? You all get your butt going. And I just kind of looked at him. I walked off the field. I'm like, I'm done with that was the point in the season where I was done. Our team sucked. We were always losing. His coach is always yelling at me. I'm tired because I'm playing both ways. I'm over this.
And in his mind, when you walked off the field, I bet you it was a point of pride. Right? I broke you.
Yeah.
Right? Deep down, that's what they're trying to do, right? We've seen coaches who literally will say to you in an endurance sport, which we will not name, you throw, my whole goal with this training group is you throw 12 eggs at the wall and 1 or 2 aren't going to break. And those are the ones that are going to win you a medal.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a real point of pride in that, if that cracked you, you were going to crack anyway. And it's
or you'll crack under pressure.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Or the pressure
if you can't handle this, you can't handle a game where it matters.
Well, and that's the thing. Is I kind of compare contrast, because then the following year, again, we were awful that year. The following year, head coach steps down, new head coach steps in. Amazing man, literally to this day, probably one of my favorite people and individuals I've ever got to meet. Taught me a lot about how to be a leader, how to be a man who helps boys become men. Really use sport to really help us in our lives mature. And he never yelled at us, but he always got us to think deeper. I remember I had one game where we should have been killing this team and we weren't, and it was tough. And I had my one day my teammates were just, shouting at me, getting at me, and I was like, one of those days I was like, frig, man, no matter what I do, I'm doing something wrong. Yeah, I can't help you guys. None of you guys are making mistakes apparently. I was done with it. And I walked off the field. Again, I seem to have this habit of walking off the field. And then the next day, coach pulls me into his office. He's like, hey, so what happened out there, man? And I just told him what the situation was, this, that, the other. He's like, dude, I understand that play. I got burned on it so many times in my time playing. I get it. It's tough. And it's a hard way to defend. I get it, man. And totally validated where I was coming from.
Right.
But then the conversation flipped. And he's like, but if you ever walk off the field like that again and quit on us like that,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to ask you to hand in your stuff. And it was just such it was a coolest point where you validated where I was coming from, but he's like, but that also wasn't okay.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
I appreciate
the
that.
best leaders in the world, you know, that recipe is really consistent. Connection always precedes commitment
Right.
with the best leaders, right? When you reverse that, it becomes super dangerous, right? I'm asking you to blindly commit, and I'm going to push and push and push. And then, you know, in the coach's mind, that's our avenue of connection, but it's just pushing you further away. And your coach is also making, in my opinion, two really dangerous assumptions when they're yelling at you like that. For one, it's fear-based leadership, which is proven to cause a whole range of back to your mental health problems. But the assumptions are, one, motivation's the problem. You're not motivated enough to do a good job of this. You're not pushing hard enough, right? You can't just keep turning up the volume on something
Right.
and expect it to just sound better. Quality and volume, you know, are obviously different. So assumption one is, you know, motivation's the problem. Assumption two is, your motivation should be external, right? You're not motivated enough, and it should come from me. Lean on me as your motivation.
Right.
Neither of those are sustainable methods of
Right.
leadership, right? You're motivated. You're just not solving the problem the right way. And your motivation should come from inside. The second story you told is a good example of how someone motivates you through connection, right?
Absolutely.
So there's a lot wrapped up in there, but
Yeah, and I think that was, I think the biggest point about that for me was that team that year, we went on to win a city championship. We stunk. We were last place, literally losing to second-tier teams. I mean, we were in the first tier in terms of divisions. We lost to a second-tier team in the playoffs. That's how awful we were. And the following year, we went on to win, a regional championship.
Did you guys? Was it the same guys?
Same group of guys.
Yeah,
exact same group of guys.
See how incredible leadership can be with the exact same talent, right? You're not necessarily trying to recruit better athletes and change your whole team. It's the same guys,
Right.
but you're getting drastically different results. And so, that's the power of culture. That's the performance impact of culture, right? And I coach track and fields at Dow. I'm the sprints coach there. And I've learned a ton. When I first started off, I was probably more in the camp of all athletes should be self-motivated, or they should be motivated enough to do all these things. And as I coached and gained experience, I started to learn that, I need to help these athletes be better, at managing their own lives and just better at being people.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what leadership's about. It's about investing in the people that you're working with and coaching them.
Absolutely. I think I think we're going to kind of swing into our final question of the day, unless you have something. You're good?
Well, I just wanted to mention one more thing.
Oh, please.
And it's a funny situation. I retweeted it a long time ago, and it's always the example I use for football.
Okay.
Because football's kind of known to have that over-the-top energy, right? Like, let's get hyped up. Let's go nuts.
the strength coach.
Oh, and it's there was a tweet from one of the, I think it was a collegiate NCAA school football program, and they had a hype coach. I think it was just their strength coach, but he was at the games. His goal was to get them hyped up.
Right.
Like, and the energy is like over the top. It's at the start of a game, and they're going nuts, and they're like pushing each other, and it's just like really, aggressive. They got absolutely destroyed in that game. And that was the retweet, was like,
Well,
they
lots
lost.
of sports psychologists are like, these are conflicting.
Totally. But you think about the strategy behind that is, it's football games, like 2 hours long?
3, yeah.
3? How can you sustain that energy over 3 hours? You're not using that energy properly.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the thing with sports in general. Like, as soon as you start playing with your emotions, you've lost. It always have to be even keel for you to actually be focused enough to win a game. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as we would you want to say something?
No,
you're good.
Yeah. This is just there's so many interesting avenues to go down.
Oh, dude, that's why we started the podcast, man.
Yeah.
It's like we love having conversations, right?
Yeah.
And but yeah, like I want to kind of land on this as we kind of close off here is I remember the first meeting we had, it was kind of a meeting about design and where Interlogic was going initially. And as a person who was in that meeting and got the chance to, help with some design work on the project, I've seen a lot of products. I've worked with a lot of different clients. There's very few that I'm like, that's going to go somewhere. Interlogic was one of those.
Oh, thank God that's where you went with
Yeah.
that.
You're done. It's over.
Edge of a knife there. Yeah.
Shut it down. Quit. Yeah. And I was actually really excited about seeing where you guys go. I think it's going to be so big that's why I'm going to ask this next question is, do you see yourselves, if you get big enough, that you will either stay in Halifax, or do you think you'll end up going to another city, a bigger city, in order to, sustain growth and scale?
That's really far in the future. I think Halifax is a tech hub. I think it's a developing tech hub.
Awesome.
It's, the university access here, the funding opportunities from the government, the real estate, office space.
People like you guys doing stuff like that.
Yeah, the opportunities. Nova Scotia's, it's a startup hub. And I think, if we were to get bigger and more successful, we'd be foolish to leave this place. And I don't know where we would go. I mean, we both live here and our families are here. And, I think it would be a mistake to leave Halifax. I think companies are actually looking to move to Nova Scotia and Halifax because of the affordability of it, because of, the beauty, the natural beauty, the access to talent that's coming out of the universities here. Yeah. So, Halifax is, to me, the ideal place to start a startup like this.
Same. I would just, echo that totally. It's 100% ideal. I think it would be like one of the saddest days of my life. Like, I've moved around a little bit as our family, and I travel a ton for work. I traveled, like Mike's done it too, 150 days or something in 2019. So every time you fly in here, it's like it's just the best. Like, like that, we always go from like Montreal to here. You're always coming from Toronto to here, and you get, it's always the same views, and it just warms you up. You're like, man, this is where I want to live. The fact that, where I can only speak for me, but where I want to live is such a hub, like an understated maybe hub.
Absolutely.
Like internationally or nationally. We have so much support that like it's a time crunch in our day. Like we have so many people, almost all of them are CEOs or really, done it. They've been there and done it. And the passion is so high because they did it here in Nova Scotia. Like on a weekly basis, we have people saying like, oh my gosh, you got to get on a call with this person. She's so excited to help Nova Scotians.
Amazing.
And then you talk to that person and you're like, this isn't like a facade. This is a real thing. People actually are like, the best part of their day is helping a Nova Scotia startup because they were a Nova Scotia startup. That culture, that's a culture in and of itself. We will 100% strive to like pay forward. So as soon as, and I'm paranoid that this may never work out. I go to bed every night thinking it may not. So hearing you say that it will only adds more pressure to my daily routine of trying to fall asleep. But, if it ever makes it somewhere where we hope it makes it, we are like 150% committed to going, let's help everybody.
For sure.
Anyone who's trying to do something here.
Yeah, we've had some good mentors locally as well. And it's actually pretty incredible once you network out in Nova Scotia and Halifax, the type of connections you can make. You can talk to CEOs of ridiculously successful companies and you could have coffee with them.
Oh man, and they're such good people. Yeah. They're just like legit good people.
Yeah, so the ability to network in Halifax and the small ecosystem, it's pretty significant. And I think again, it's another advantage of being here.
Absolutely.
Good question. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for answering, and appreciate you guys coming in. We loved having you on, and being able to have some deeper talks about mental health and the way it affects sports and all the type of different things that Interlogic is touching in their in its product. So you guys
covered a ton.
Yeah,
you guys are good. I can't imagine how good you'd be with 2 mics.
Yo, I can imagine.
Half capacity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, on that, we'll call it a day. Thank you so much for coming on, and be sure. Actually, I owe you guys this much.
Okay.
Is there anything we got 30 seconds, 45 seconds? Anything you want to final plugs? Anything you want to shout out? It's all you. The platform is yours.
Oh my God.
All right. Well, check out
pressure.
interlogic.ca for more information about Interlogic. Look us up on LinkedIn,
Yep.
or Twitter or Facebook, and reach out to us. We'd love to have a
Contact
chat.
us.
Absolutely.
Our daily dopamine pushes from inboxes and Twitter and LinkedIn messages. Like, just get at us if you're interested.
And they're honestly super great guys to talk to. Will give you the time of day, as you even hear on this podcast that, you know, they get distracted by even, you know, stuff that doesn't work. So they'll definitely talk to you. They're some of the nicest individuals I've ever had the pleasure of getting to meet. So I can definitely vouch for that statement in itself. Awesome. Have yourselves a good one, and we're out.
Thank
See ya.
you.
So yeah.